On May 23, 2026, just 48 hours ago, the APC announced that President Bola Tinubu received 10.99 million votes in its presidential primary. Here is the problem with that number. In the 2023 general election, with 93.4 million registered voters across the entire country, Tinubu received 8,794,726 votes, a nationwide contest with INEC oversight, polling units in every ward. But last Saturday, in a party-only exercise restricted to APC card-carrying members, that number was somehow exceeded by over 2 million votes. Land the contradiction precisely. The same Nigeria, whose electronic transmission systems failed in 2023, whose BVAS machines lagged, whose results were uploaded manually, that same Nigeria allegedly ran a flawless, simultaneous 8,809 ward primary with 0 technical failures. Sharpen the absurdity. In 2023, Kano delivered roughly 420,000 votes for Tinubu in the national election. Last Saturday, the APC announced he received 500,852 votes in Kano alone, from party members only. In Abia State, Tinubu received fewer than 9,000 votes in 2023. In this primary, he allegedly received over 161,000 votes from APC members in a state where the party barely functions. So the real question is not whether Tinubu won his own party's primary. The real question is who actually voted, and if those numbers are fabricated, what does that tell us about what is being planned for 2027? Before we go any further, I need you to understand why this channel exists. I spent days cross-referencing primary results across 36 states, pulling ward-by-ward figures, reading Electoral Act provisions, and comparing 2023 INEC data to 2026 APC returns. Because mainstream Nigerian media will give you the headline, but nobody is giving you the arithmetic. If that kind of work matters to you, if you believe Nigerians deserve this level of analysis, then hit that subscribe button right now. I am not asking for money. I am asking for one tap. Because the only thing that keeps this research going, the only thing that tells me the hours I put into this are worth it, is knowing that you are here and that you are sharing this with someone who needs to see it. We are Niger Insider Report. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you in the next 30 minutes will change the way you see everything happening in this country.
Exactly happened. On May 23, 2026, the APC conducted a presidential primary across all 8,809 wards nationwide, a direct primary where all registered party members were eligible to vote, replacing the old delegates-based system. President Tinubu's sole challenger was Stanley Osifo, a trader from Edo State, who received 2,675 total votes nationwide. In multiple wards, including in Kano, Osifo received 0 votes. By Sunday, May 24th, APC National Chairman Nentawe Yilwatuda declared Tinubu the winner with 10.99 million votes, a figure released the same day Tinubu gave an acceptance speech acknowledging in his own words that many Nigerians are still struggling. The APC's National Working Committee, under guidelines signed by National Secretary Senator Ajibola Basiru, designed the direct primary framework. State governors served as state collation officers, meaning the same executives who depend on federal patronage certified the results in their own states. In Kano, Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf personally declared Tinubu the winner. The 2027 general election is set for January 16, 2027, barely 7 months away. A massive primary vote creates a psychological number, a figure opponents must argue against even before the campaign begins. The ADC has already alleged the 10.99 million figure was designed to condition Nigerians for the kind of rigging being planned ahead of 2027. The timing also neutralizes the narrative that Tinubu's northern base has eroded, a narrative driven by visible trader anger in markets from Kano to Kaduna. The 2022 APC primary that produced Tinubu's first candidacy itself was contested amid allegations of delegate manipulation, with names on lists not matching faces in halls, and two parallel River State primaries producing two different results. The Electoral Act 2026 was partly designed to fix that. The same questions now resurface. Now, here is what should stop every one of you in your tracks. In Borno State, a state currently dealing with active Boko Haram and ISWAP violence across multiple local governments, the APC announced that 414,988 votes were cast out of 430,715 registered voters. That is a 96.3% turnout rate in a conflict zone, in a state where farmers cannot safely access their farmland. You are telling me that Borno State delivered a near-perfect turnout in a party primary, but Nigeria could not manage 30% turnout in a general election with 93 million registered voters? That is the contradiction no APC spokesperson has answered. And here is what nobody is telling you yet, and it starts with the Electoral Act. Designed and approved the primary framework, responsible for credentialing state collation officers. An inherent conflict of interest, incumbents certifying results in states where they control political machinery. Has no oversight role over internal party primaries. Its only intervention comes after candidates are nominated, meaning the credibility gate is entirely internal to the APC. A key new provision requires parties to use NIN-linked membership registers to verify who is actually a party member. The question now being raised, was this provision fully applied in Saturday's exercise? No independent verification has been published.
Section 84 of the Electoral Act as amended governs party primaries. It requires direct primaries to be conducted with a verifiable membership list. The Electoral Act 2026 introduced a provision that said no candidate shall be nominated from a primary not conducted in accordance with verified NIN-linked membership data. APC officials in Ebonyi State publicly stated they used an electronic register where every registered member automatically becomes a delegate, but no national-level audit of that register has been published, and no independent body has confirmed the total registered membership number that would make 10.99 million votes mathematically possible. There is no mandatory independent observer requirement for party primaries under Nigerian law. INEC may assign monitors but is not obligated to validate results. This ambiguity benefits the incumbent. Results can be announced without independent verification, and legal challenges face an extremely narrow window under the Electoral Act's timeline. This is where the story leaves the party secretariat and enters the marketplace, because the most important judges of Tinubu's 10.99 million votes are not lawyers or opposition politicians. They are the traders of Kano. And what they are saying is something the APC cannot afford to ignore. President Tinubu, this number resets his psychological baseline. Going into 2027, his campaign can argue that even within the party, he commands numbers that exceed his 2023 total, creating a narrative of growing rather than shrinking support. APC governors, by serving as collation officers and delivering large numbers, they signal loyalty and indispensability to Aso Rock, valuable currency when 2027 governorship tickets and federal appointments are being distributed. APC as institution, a large primary number discourages internal defection and signals to potential APC crossover votes that the party machinery is functional. The Northern Opposition Bloc, Kwankwaso's NNPP, Atiku's ADC, and Peter Obi's Labour Party all now face a manufactured headcount that they must debunk, not just oppose. The Kano political establishment, despite delivering 505,852 votes on paper, the street reality in Kano is dramatically different. Data published this week shows Tinubu suffered slight declines in core northern strongholds, Kano, Katsina, Jigawa, and Bauchi, compared to his already weak 2023 performance in those states. In 2023, Tinubu was trounced in Kano by Kwankwaso. The votes being claimed now come from APC members, but the Kano dominant political structure is NNPP, not APC. Stanley Osifo, serving as the lone challenger, received 2,675 votes nationally, making him a statistical footnote, but his presence made the exercise legally a contested primary rather than an affirmation, which the APC needed for Electoral Act compliance.
The direct primary system required simultaneous deployment across 8,809 wards, mobilizing party agents, vehicles, ballot materials, and collation officers. The financial cost of that exercise is not publicly disclosed. Who funded it, party dues, or federal government adjacent resources is an unresolved question. The 2027 election cycle will drive billions in contracts, appointments, and budget allocations. A sitting president entering the campaign with an 11 million vote primary result commands a different negotiating position with governors, senators, and international investors than one entering under credibility questions. The APC's internal primaries were widely contested across other categories. House of Representatives primaries in Lagos saw allegations of intimidation, Adamawa aspirants staged protests, a serving senator in Kogi East allegedly received 0 votes in his own polling unit. The PDP is restructuring, having lost Atiku to the ADC. The ADC, now carrying Atiku, immediately called the 10.99 million figure a fabricated and said it was a subtle attempt to condition Nigerians for the kind of fantastic rigging being planned. The Labour Party and Peter Obi have not yet formally responded. That silence is itself a political calculation. The January 16, 2027 presidential election is now less than 8 months away. Tinubu's primary result gives him a narrative shield going into the campaign, but it may also raise the scrutiny bar because if 10.99 million APC members voted for him in May 2026, any general election result lower than that becomes a statistical question mark. The 2023 general election saw only 25 million total votes cast nationally. If Tinubu claims 11 million from his own party and loses in 2027, the numbers will face retroactive legal challenge. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos and Chief of Staff Femi Gbajabiamila have publicly framed the primary as proof of confidence. But in 2023, Tinubu lost Lagos to Peter Obi in the presidential race, and the primary added 814,988 Lagos votes. Who are those members? Northern power brokers who backed Tinubu in 2023 but have since distanced themselves are conspicuously absent from the victory commentary. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is just how party primaries work in Nigeria. Everyone inflates the numbers. This is nothing new. But stop. Look at what happened in 1919 when the APC conducted a similarly inflated internal exercise ahead of Buhari's second term. The numbers were dismissed as internal until INEC announced general election results that could not be reconciled with voter registration data in several states. Those cases ended up in electoral tribunals. The same electoral architecture is still in place. The same Electoral Act violations that were litigated then are being set up now, but this time with an opposition that is explicitly saying they will use these figures in court. This is not coincidence. This is a playbook, and we have seen it before. Right, pause here for 1 second. What I've just broken down for you, the ward-by-ward arithmetic, the governor as collation officer, the 96% turnout in a conflict zone, took me days of research to compile. I didn't just pull a headline and read it to you. I went through INEC 2023 ward data, APC primary return figures, the Electoral Act 2026, and statements from 4 different parties to build this picture. And I need you to know, the only thing that makes that work sustainable, the only thing that signals to me that this labor is worth it, is when someone who just found this channel subscribes. Not because I'm asking for a favor, but because if you care about Nigeria enough to be watching this right now, then you know that the alternative, the evening news, the partisan blogs, is not giving you this. Hit subscribe, share this video with one person, because in the next section, I'm going to show you something that makes everything I just said even more significant, and it comes from Kano's markets, not Kano's government house. I asked you earlier to hold the number 11.99 million. Here is who it was designed for. It was not designed for Atiku, it was not designed for Peter Obi, it was designed for the 140 million Nigerians currently living below the poverty line to make them believe before a single campaign flyer is printed that Tinubu is untouchable. Because when a person in Kano's Singa market who cannot afford to restock after a fire hears that 500,000 APC members in his state chose Tinubu, the psychological message is resistance is futile. That is the power of a manufactured supermajority. It is not about APC membership, it is about voter psychology before the campaign even begins. Tinubu himself, in his acceptance speech on May 24, 2026, acknowledged that many Nigerians are still struggling, a striking admission the morning after his party declared him the beneficiary of 11.99 million votes. Since his fuel subsidy removal and Naira float in 2023, inflation spiked to approximately 34% at its peak. Government figures now cite a decline between 15 and 23%, but ordinary Nigerians remain deeply unconvinced, with poverty now set to affect more than 140 million people. The ADC has noted that nearly 35 million Nigerians are projected to face acute food insecurity in 2026. This is the economic backdrop against which the APC is claiming record internal support.
In Kano's Singa market, one of the largest commercial hubs in northern Nigeria, a major fire earlier in 2026 destroyed properties estimated at over 5 billion naira, impacting more than 1,000 businesses. Tinubu pledged 5 billion naira in relief. As of the primary date, that money had not been fully disbursed to the affected traders. The same traders who are waiting for Aso Rock's 5 billion naira are now being told their state delivered 508,552 votes for Tinubu. The credibility gap between those two facts is the political fault line that will define Kano in 2027. Multiple traders interviewed in national outlets this week were blunt. One described Tinubu as having little understanding of governance and warned that only the unwise would support him for a second term. In Borno, which returned a 96% turnout, banditry, kidnappings and ISWAP violence continue. Farmers in the northwest cannot safely access farmlands. Tinubu himself declared a national emergency on insecurity and poverty in May 2026, weeks before the primary that claimed perfect democratic participation in those same insecure zones. For someone in Makurdi, Aba, Warri or Jos who is not following politics closely, what this means is simple. The numbers being announced by the ruling party do not match the lived experience on the street. And when official numbers stop matching lived reality, trust in institutions collapses faster than any opposition can engineer. And this is where it gets international, because the question of whether Tinubu's 10.99 million votes are real is not just a Nigerian conversation. It is being watched very carefully from London, Washington and Brussels, and here is exactly why that matters for your Naira, your remittances, and Nigeria's standing at the IMF. The United States, UK and EU observer missions were critical of INEC's transparency failures in the 2023 general election. Internal party primaries do not fall under their formal observation mandates, but they do inform risk assessments for the 2027 general election cycle. Nigeria's relationship with the IMF and World Bank is tied to governance credibility benchmarks. A ruling party that cannot conduct verifiable internal primaries creates institutional risk flags that affect investor confidence, particularly as Nigeria's foreign reserves stood at 46.11 billion naira in January 2026, up from 33.23 billion naira in May 2023, figures the administration is using to argue reform success. For Nigerians in the UK, US and Canada sending remittances, which are a critical lifeline in an economy where the Naira has depreciated more than 50% since 2023, the credibility of the 2027 electoral process directly affects whether they choose to invest, return or remain abroad. If the 2027 election produces a disputed result and the primary numbers become a legal exhibit, another cycle of post-election uncertainty will suppress foreign direct investment and business confidence at exactly the moment Nigeria needs capital inflow most. This is not the first time a government has manufactured supermajority internal primary figures ahead of a contested general election. In Zimbabwe's 2017 to 2018 cycle, ZANU-PF produced internal party figures that were later cited as template data for general election manipulation. The international community's failure to challenge those internal exercises was later identified as an early warning sign that went unheeded. Nigeria is not Zimbabwe, but the institutional template is recognizable. And here is the international mirror nobody wants to hold up. In Kenya's 2017 election, the IEBC's internal results transmission system was hacked, and the Supreme Court annulled the election, citing the inability to verify whether the electronic results matched the physical tallies. Nigeria's Electoral Act 2026 was partly written in response to that Kenyan precedent. The NIN-linked membership register provision is directly borrowed from Kenya's biometric voter framework, but Kenya's framework worked because it was independently audited before the election. Nigeria's APC primary used a similar framework, and 0 independent auditors have published any verification. If Kenya teaches us anything, it is that the system is only as credible as its last independent audit.
The strongest argument for the APC's position is this. The direct primary system, for the first time in APC history, gave every registered member a vote, not just delegates. If the party conducted a genuine membership registration drive over the past 2 years, and if the electronic register was faithfully applied, then 10.99 million votes across a party of Nigeria's scale is not inherently impossible. Party officials cite the fact that results tracked patterns. Tinubu performed slightly lower in his traditional northern strongholds and higher in the southeast and south-south, which would suggest organic variance rather than blanket fabrication. That argument collapses when you apply the comparative arithmetic. In 2023's national election, open to all 93.4 million registered voters, only 25 million votes were cast total. Tinubu's entire coalition produced 8.79 million. For an APC internal primary to produce 10.99 million, APC would need to have registered more than 11 million verifiable members. That number has never been independently audited. The party has not published a total membership register count. The Gombe invisible election, where Atajiri provided photographic and video evidence of no accreditation, no ballots, and results still announced, is a documented case of results materializing without a voting process. That is not a virulence pattern. That is manufactured data. The slight decline in Kano, Katsina, and Jigawa does not rescue the numbers. It is being used to create the appearance of credibility, while the aggregate total remains mathematically implausible. 1. This is just an APC internal matter. It doesn't affect the general election. False. Under the Electoral Act, a candidate's nomination documents include primary election results. Those documents become legal exhibits in post-election petitions. If the 10.99 million figure is challenged, it affects Tinubu's standing before the tribunal, even before 2027 votes are counted. 2. 10 million APC members voting is normal. It's a big party. There is no publicly verified APC membership register that has ever exceeded 10 million independently confirmed members. The APC itself has never published a nationally audited membership figure. The claim is not supported by any document that is independently verifiable. 3. Opposition parties do the same thing. This is political hypocrisy. The ADC, PDP, and LP have conducted their own primaries this cycle, and several were also contested. But none of those parties is claiming a 10.99 million member vote with near 100% turnout in conflict zones. The scale of the claim is what separates it from routine primary irregularity. I asked you at the beginning, if those 10.99 million votes are fabricated, what does that tell us about 2027? Here is the answer. It tells us that the primary was not about selecting a candidate.
Tinubu was always going to be the candidate. The primary was about constructing a pre-campaign number, a figure large enough to create psychological dominance, narrow enough in its manipulation to survive legal challenge, and just credible enough in its variance to avoid immediate international condemnation. Whether you are in Kano or Enugu, whether you voted for this government in 2023 or queued for hours and watched your vote be disputed, what every Nigerian needs to understand is this: the battle for 2027 has already begun, and the first battlefield is the credibility of numbers. APC will deploy the 10.99 million figure as a campaign anchor, more votes than our 2023 general election total, while quietly managing the growing number of APC aspirants who lost contested primaries and are now threatening court cases or defections. ADC Atiku Bloc. Having explicitly called the figures fabricated, Atiku's team will likely commission independent analysis of the ward-level numbers and present it before the 2027 Election Petitions Tribunal as a legal strategy, not just rhetoric. The Northern Electorate. The Kano street reality, traders struggling with inflation, undelivered 5 billion naira relief, and food insecurity will produce an enthusiasm gap in 2027 that primary paper figures cannot close. Watch for NNPP's Kwankwaso to exploit this gap aggressively in the next quarter.
Will any Nigerian civil society organization or independent body publish an audit of APC's membership register? Will INEC formally acknowledge or comment on the primary's compatibility with the Electoral Act 2026 NIN provisions? How many APC aspirants who lost contested primary contests file formal petitions, and will any reach the courts before the general election? Will the 5 billion naira pledge to Kano Singa market traders be fully disbursed? And if not, how does that affect APC's northern ground game? A 2027 election conducted against the backdrop of pre-established numerical credibility collapse, where the primary figures become Exhibit A in a post-election tribunal, dragging Nigeria into another cycle of disputed presidential legitimacy. Given that the 2023 election was itself litigated for months, and the Supreme Court's eventual ruling did not fully settle public confidence, a repeat would be a democratic stress fracture with serious economic and security consequences. Realistic probability, moderate to high, contingent on how effectively the opposition structures its legal architecture before January 16th. The APC publishes a transparent NIN-verified membership register that makes the 10.99 million figure independently verifiable. INEC affirms compliance with the Electoral Act. A genuinely competitive 2027 general election follows, and whoever wins commands a credibility mandate. This requires institutional behavior that the APC's primary conduct has not yet demonstrated. Realistic probability, low, unless external pressure from international observers, CSOs, or judicial intervention forces transparency. Demand that civil society organizations formally request APC's audited membership register under the Freedom of Information Act and the Electoral Act 2026. Track INEC's official position on whether the primary complied with NIN-linked membership verification. Register, confirm voter card, and organize in communities, because a fabricated primary number is dangerous only if it is accompanied by a suppressed general electorate. The antidote to manufactured numbers is real ones. I asked you at the top, if 93.4 million registered voters produced only 8.79 million votes for Tinubu in a national election, how did a party-only primary produce 10.99 million? The facts now point in one direction. The APC conducted a primary designed not to select a candidate, Tinubu was never in doubt, but to produce a number. A number large enough to project invincibility, small enough to avoid immediate legal annihilation, and delivered through a system where governors certified their own results in their own states, in conflict zones with claimed 96% turnout, in states where party machinery is structurally weak. The primary is legal, the candidate is legitimate under Nigerian law, but the number is not a reflection of grassroots democracy. It is the opening move in a 2027 campaign being fought with arithmetic. What we do not yet know is the total independently verified APC membership count that would either validate or collapse the 10.99 million figure. When that number becomes public through a court order, a CSO audit, or an INEC verification, we will be back with a full follow-up analysis. I want to hear from you, especially if you think I have missed something, gotten a figure wrong, or if you are physically present at one of these primary venues. Drop a comment below. That conversation, that pushback is what makes this channel worth building. Let me be honest with you before I go. This video took me days to put together, not hours, days. Cross-referencing ward data, tracking the Electoral Act provisions, comparing 2023 INEC figures to 2026 APC returns state by state. I do this because I believe Nigerians deserve analysis that goes beyond the headline, and I do it alone without a newsroom budget, without a PR team, without anyone handing me talking points. The only way I can keep doing this work, the only signal I have that it matters, is when someone like you subscribes, shares, and tells one other Nigerian to watch. So if this video gave you something that the evening news could not, if it made you see this story differently, share it right now with one person who needs to understand what is really happening in this country. Like this video, subscribe to Niger Insider Report, turn on notifications so you never miss a story. I put everything into this. The least it deserves is to reach every Nigerian who needs to see it. I will see you in the next one, and trust me, what we're covering next is one you absolutely cannot afford to miss.